The Chiefs have won the AFC West the last 8 seasons in a row. Will it switch up in 2024? The 2024 NFL season preview continues right now.
This is the 2024 Locked On NFL season preview, only on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the 2024 Locked On NFL season preview. This episode, we are focusing on the AFC West. The episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started, and excited to get started today. I'm your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast, and I'm here with the host of every team in the AFC West, from my guy David Drogemeyer, Locked On Chargers, Sarah Bettinger, Locked On Broncos, and Ryan Tracy, Locked On Chiefs. You may have heard of the Chiefs. They're pretty good. Back-to-back Super Bowl champs going for the trifecta. But fellas, it's great to be back with you guys. It's great to talk about the contenders, the pretenders, just breaking down the division here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, or Locked On Podcast Network. And of course, we're going to also do our win totals by way of FanDuel. So off top, I guess we could just go around the room real quick. And David, we'll start with you. Is there anyone outside of the Chiefs that you see as the contender for the AFC West this year?
No, unfortunately not. I think there's a lot of turnover and change that's happened in the AFC West, whether it be quarterback change, coaching changes. But there's one team that hasn't really changed very much at all, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. And so with that being said, with the quarterback and the coach, and just the limit and the amount of turnover from year over year, still feel like they're in prime position to do a lot of damage in the AFC West.
Sarah, what are your thoughts?
I think the Chiefs are. I thought David was going to say he. I'm trying not to pick the Broncos, but I have to pick the Chiefs. But no, I think we're all going to be in agreement on this one. Kansas City, the juggernaut, the inevitable, the Patriots of the day, right? The dynasty of the day, and so I think. Going with the realm of realism here, I'm sticking with the Chiefs winning the division this year. Now, what happens beyond that? It could be exciting, but the Chiefs, I think they're going to keep it pretty status quo.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's funny, man. It feels like that the other 3 teams in the division consistently are competing for second place, right? Who's going to be in that second place? It's just how it's been. And Ryan, obviously Locked On Chiefs. I mean, just how are you feeling about the team coming in? I'm sure you believe the Chiefs are going to win the division as well.
I mean, I feel a whole lot better than I did 3 minutes ago. You guys are knocking it out of the park. I have no arguments whatsoever. From my point of view, I'm like, okay, we got a rookie left tackle. We got a rookie that's got to be our field stretcher. Lost our best cover guy. So I got a couple of quirks that I'm a little tied up about, but I'm going with your predictions.
No, that's all good. And when you have, a team that you're focused in on, of course, you're going to look at things that could derail the team, obviously. But as far as I'm concerned, until some team gets knocked off, until the Chiefs get knocked off, it's their division. And it's up to the Chargers, it's up to the Broncos, and it's up to the Raiders to knock off the Chiefs. And, well, they just haven't done it. So let's go over some of the totals, the expectations. FanDuel.com has provided us the totals as far as the win-losses and the over-unders. So we'll go over that real quick, and we'll start with those Kansas City Chiefs. 11.5, the over-under. How are you feeling about that, Ryan?
I have them as a 13-win season at this point. So 11 makes me feel pretty comfortable. There's a little margin for error there. I'll take it.
What do you think, David?
Yeah, so for 8.5, honestly, for me, I think that's a little bit low, and I understand that with the context of what they did last year, but they're under much better, much more experienced leadership with Jim Harbaugh, and honestly, I feel like with Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, they should be winning no less than 10 games. So, in my opinion, that is a low win total, but there's a lot of change, so I can understand why they came to that conclusion.
Yeah, so FanDuel has the Chargers listed there at 8.5 as far as their over-under, and the win total for the Broncos, it's at 5.5, Sarah. New quarterback, Sean Payton comes back again. He's got his guy, Bo Nix. He's named him the starter. 5.5, is that right? Is that low? Is that high? What are you thinking?
I love that win total projection because I think it's easiest one to smash the over on, right? I mean, the Broncos won 5 games with Nathaniel Hackett, when they fired the rookie head coach in season. I don't think there's any way you hit the under on that one. Not with Sean Payton, never won fewer than 7 games as a head coach in the NFL. And he even came out recently and said that he doesn't think this team's going to win less than 7 games this year. So I think it's a pretty easy one to smash the over. I like it. They're keeping the Broncos humble these days, even though we have plenty of reason to be already.
Well, it's funny. As far as the Raiders, FanDuel has them at the over/under 6.5, and 3 out of the 4 years they've gone over it. And it's funny that they keep getting a low number, and I'm like you, Sarah, like, hey, that's cool. Smash the over, right? Go for the over. I feel very confident that they'll go over it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of questions with the Raiders with their quarterback position, what they're going to do offensively. We know Antonio Pierce wants to be the defensive-minded guy, so he's really going to hang his hat on that. But I think that as far as just win total, I think you can smash the over as well. So I think we're all really comfortable. 11.5 for the Chiefs. Ryan has them at a 13-win team. 8.5 for the Chargers. David has them as a 10-win team. So hit the over on that. I have the Raiders over 6.5 and the Broncos over 5.5. So we're all over. How about that? We're all over. We think that these teams are all going to be at a much higher level than what FanDuel has, which means
imagine that
win some money. That means that you can win some money. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. You can absolutely win some good money if you hit the over. But, also just want to kind of, Dave, especially with you and the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh now being there as the head coach. And, of course, he's got his quarterback he's been talking about, Justin Herbert, forever. Talked about him while he was at Michigan. Just what has been the feel so far just for you with this team as the preseason is wrapped up now?
Yeah, I mean, the feeling, I think, is a lot of excitement around the Chargers, especially because they've had 3 first-time head coaches back to back to back, and it feels like the ownership's kind of went on the cheaper side, trying to bring those guys in. And now, after that, embarrassment that happened, that caused the change of them getting rid of Tom Telesco and getting rid of Brandon Staley, I think it was time for them to bust open the checkbook and go out there and get an established winner. And that's what Jim Harbaugh is. At every single stop that he's been, whether it's USD, whether it's Stanford, whether it's, the 49ers or Michigan, all of those teams were losers when he got there. After he left, they were all winners, obviously capping that off with the national championship at Michigan just last year. So, the Chargers ownership, to their credit, they busted out the check. They wrote an $80 million check to Jim Harbaugh and said, hey, here's the keys to the kingdom. We are going to give you every single coach that you want. We're going to give you the biggest staff that you want. Now it's time for you to go out there and put up or shut up. But it's all about changing the identity of this football team, Q. It's about going from a finesse team that was built from the outside in to a hard-nosed, physical, run it down your throat, beat you up type of physical football team that's built from the inside out.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We know Jim Harbaugh is going to run the rock and run it a lot. For you, Sarah, obviously you got your quarterback now in Bo Nix. As I mentioned before, Sean Payton has named him as the starter. Why is he the right guy for the job there in Denver?
Well, I think he's going to, first of all, do what Sean Payton's asking, which was not the case last year with Russell Wilson. Although, I mean, Russell did, his stuff that he always has done at the end of games and helped the Broncos go on a little streak there. But Bo Nix, he's been a little bit more of a playmaker too than I think people expected. So he's got the playmaker gene, plus he's going to run the offense really well. And he's got that poise. He's got that moxie, that leadership ability. And frankly, I've never been part of the Broncos drafting and developing their own guy in-house. So if it happens to work out here, I would be all for that because I've never seen that happen.
Ryan, for you in the Chiefs, I mean, you mentioned that there's a couple, rookies there that are going to be expected to step up right away, defending back-to-back champs. What is it that stands out to you about this upcoming season?
It's really kind of trying to find a way back to the future. And that is having that deep game back with the Xavier Worthy. Hollywood will return eventually. He's dealing with a sternoclavicular sprain right now. But having that aspect of opening the offense back up should give Travis Kelce a little bit more clearance for Rashee Rice to work underneath. They got, 1,700 little tiny slot dudes in camp. So they have plenty of underneath targeting that they can accomplish. And I think that's what they want to do. The big thing is they're going to get back to the run game because they're going to have light boxes all year long once they see those receivers. So I'm excited about it. If I had my druthers, I'd go old school too, like they're going to do in Los Angeles, because I'd like to see them run the rock more.
Well, there's going to be a lot of running the rock in Vegas. Antonio Pierce wants to run the ball, just like Jim Harbaugh wants to run the ball. The offensive line has to come together, and obviously the Raiders are going to also want to hang their hat on defense. And they continue to try to follow that same blueprint that they followed on Christmas. That's the big game that all the Raider Nation continues to talk about. That was also the last time the Chiefs lost, and then they go on to win the Super Bowl. But that defensive blueprint is what Antonio Pierce, Patrick Graham, and company, they want to stick to for this upcoming season. We're just getting started. Coming up, one thing that could derail the season for each of the teams in the AFC West. That's up next here on the 2024 Locked On NFL season preview of the AFC West. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of our great sponsors, which is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. The 2024 Locked On NFL season preview continues as we're talking all things AFC West. David Drogemeyer, Sarah Bettinger, Ryan Tracy, and Q Myers here, all from the Locked On Raiders, Locked On Chiefs, Locked On Broncos, and Locked On Chargers. So, fellas, want to talk about one thing that could derail each season. We all expect the Kansas City Chiefs to win the AFC West this season. So, Ryan, we'll start with you. What's the one thing that could derail the season for Kansas City?
Normally I would tell you any kind of injury to Pat Mahomes that makes him miss more than a game. But I will say this, kudos to Andy Reid for finally getting the quarterback he wanted. Carson Wentz looks like he's adapting the offense. He comes from a system that is very similar. So I can't say that that's the one thing, but it is, I think, now the age of Travis Kelce. He was sheltered a little bit last season, came on late at the end. If they can keep his pitch count correct, then he'll be fine. If they let that get out of control, that could bog down what is really the spark plug of this offense right now.
All right, Sarah, in Denver, what's the one thing that could derail the season, make everything go wrong?
Well, I'm with Ryan, and it starts with the injury. I mean, if you don't at least get a good evaluation on Bo Nix this season, it kind of feels like it would be a wash, even though you'd love to see some Zach Wilson out there, or Jarrett Stidham, I'm sure. But we want to see Bo Nix play. We want to have him take his lumps and make sure that he's able to, like we talked about in the previous segment, operate what Sean Payton wants to do offensively and go out there and win some games. More than 5.5, obviously, at this point. And I think non-injury wise, what could derail this season is potentially just young players not stepping up, right? The Broncos are a really young roster. They cut or traded pretty much, most of the notable names on the team from last year and replace them with a lot of guys that even the fan base is like, who's going to be playing outside corner this year? Who's going to be playing off-ball linebacker next to Alex Singleton? So it's a lot of these young players at pretty much, any area of this roster that you look at, that if those guys don't step up the way Sean Payton thinks, then the season would get derailed for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Bo Nix, which is a rookie, but it's funny because he comes in with so much experience in college, right? 61 career starts. So that's really good. Most of the time you see a rookie and they only have a handful of games under their belt, but 61 is a lot of experience. So we'll see how that translates in the NFL and, of course, with the Denver Broncos. David, we know that Jim Harbaugh is going to want to run the rock a lot there in L.A. with the Chargers. What could derail it? What could make the season go wrong?
Yeah, I think when you look at the Chargers offense, they have a lot of young wide receivers, a lot of unproven talent in that room. So I think, if they don't get the maturation from those receivers in that room, that could definitely spell some challenges for the Chargers offense. I do feel like they expect Justin Herbert to be a quarterback that's good enough to elevate the talent that is around him. And he has showcased an ability to do that. But I think as far as, what else would derail is the Chargers, had some salary cap issues that they had to navigate this offseason. And that resulted in them having to bring in a lot of kind of, 1-year contracts for guys that were, having to bounce back from seasons that weren't the best the previous year. Guys like Bradley Bozeman at the center position, guys like Christian Fulton at the cornerback position, DJ Chark. There's several examples on this roster where they have guys that, didn't do well or didn't perform as well or up to their potential the previous year. And the Chargers are hoping that a change of scenery will get them to be able to play better this season with the Chargers.
Can you tell my guy Quentin Johnson to step up, please? That's the homeboy, man. Can you just tell him?
I know, man. Well, I can tell you he's actually improved quite a bit in this offseason. The route running, the separation, it is like truly gotten improved. And that's not just me saying it. That's everybody who has watched practice. QJ is a very much different receiver going into his sophomore season.
Good. Shout out to Temple, Texas. That's my guy. So I'm always hoping that Q does really well, not just because his name starts with a Q. But for the Raiders, for the season to be a derailment in general, it's just a quarterback play, right? I mean, there's no way around it. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell aren't, the sexiest names and the sexiest quarterbacks in the league. It's just they're not. The Raiders have to get good, consistent quarterback play. They're not going to get elite quarterback play. I mean, there's no mistake in it. They're not, Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert or, even Bo Nix, who has high expectations, right? But they're a couple of guys. Minshew, we know who he is, right? He's a journeyman. He's getting the start for the season because, Antonio Pierce said that they need a spark. They need a guy to be able to get into the season really quickly. So, at some point, I'm expecting that Aiden O'Connell will probably play as well. It's kind of the nature of the beast. So the season will go bad if the quarterback play is bad. And so that's obviously going to be the big question. Mentioned it multiple times that the defense is where the Raiders are going to want to hang their hat this season. And they've got the playmakers on offense. You know that. I mean, Devontae, Jacoby, Brock Bowers. We could talk about him in a little while, but they've got to have a guy that can get on the ball. So that's going to be Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, and probably a combination of the two. So when it comes to the division and who we're looking at as the potential MVP of the division, David, I'll start with you. Who do you think is in line to potentially be division MVPs?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two guys that come to mind. Quite honestly, I think everybody are probably going to say similar names, but Patrick Mahomes is first and foremost. That's the easiest one. Yeah. Obviously, there's not really much that needs to be said. I mean, he's one of the best. He's the best, quarterback on the planet, period. I mean, he just his experience, his productivity, the championships, the wins. I mean, he just does everything at a very, very high level. So it is what it is. And then, of course, I think Justin Herbert has that ability as well. I mean, the arm talent and everything that he's done, the stats that he's put up in the first 4 years with no semblance of a running game and really, no good defense at all. I mean, he's had a bottom 5 defense pretty much every year of his NFL career. So we're hoping, with the new additions on the coaching staff and a better running game, that we'll be able to get a more efficient version of Justin Herbert, which, of course, it doesn't matter how good you are if you don't win games. If your teams do not win games, even though it's an individual award, there's no individual awards that go to players on losing teams. That's the fact of the matter. So the Chargers have to win in order for Justin Herbert to be in position, and hopefully the pairing of Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert will push them over the edge.
Sarah, what are you looking at when you're looking at MVPs, potential MVPs in the AFC West?
Well, I think the low-hanging fruit is, of course, Patrick Mahomes offensively, but Justin Herbert has a chance if the Chargers go as, like David's saying there. I mean, if the Chargers win a lot of games, Justin's going to be in that conversation. I think defensively is where you kind of have two underrated potential defensive MVP candidates, Chris Jones, Max Crosby. I think those two guys have such an opportunity to affect games week in and week out. I mean, we saw even last year with the down year the Chiefs had offensively, that defense was able to dominate teams, right? And Chris Jones is the biggest reason why, in my opinion. And anytime the Broncos play Max Crosby, I don't know. I feel like they tried blocking him with 4 or 5 guys at a time, but it doesn't seem to work. So those two guys to me are legit defensive MVP candidates on that side of the ball as well. And I think, you go up against those guys a couple times a year, it can derail your season as well when you go up against those two guys in particular.
It's funny. Those are exactly the guys I was thinking about. Obviously, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Justin Herbert on the offensive side of things, quarterbacks, you know what they mean to the league. But I was thinking of those two dudes defensively as well. Chris Jones and Max Crosby, just fantastic players Excellent. That play at the highest level all the time. So I would look at those guys as potential MVPs as well in the AFC West. And Ryan, what are you looking at as far as who do you have on your short list of potential MVPs in the division?
It's tough, and I like that you went defense because I do think that is a possibility. If it takes a while to get what is a lot of targets on track for Patrick Mahomes, maybe it does slow down, and maybe the defense has a chance because, unfortunately, for the other big quarterbacks in the division, they have a little bit hard row to hoe here. Justin, I agree, has that potential, but I don't know about his targets, right? Is he going to have enough there? The targets might be a little bit better. I mean, nobody's better than Devontae, but who's throwing to him, right? So the other guy that I'll mention, I was going to go Max, but well done. I'll say if he can up the takeaway percentage against what I think is maybe a lighter group of receivers in the division, I think Pat Surtain could be in the running as well. So there's a possibility there to be the shutdown guy in this division.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Pat Surtain is fantastic. I think that Jack Jones, if he could stay healthy and play throughout the course of the 17-game season, and again, Ryan, to your point, takeaways, right? You got to have takeaways. And to David's point, you got to be on a winning team, right? Raider fans always get mad because how come Max isn't getting more love? Because the Raiders are losing, right? I mean, it's just bottom line. If
same thing with Khalil Mack last year. He had 17 sacks, had more than the defensive player of the year, but the Chargers won 5 games, so it didn't matter what he did.
Exactly. I mean, that's the bottom line, and it's unfortunate, but that's what it is. If your team is not winning games, then they're not going to get that recognition. So I like that. A lot of really good thoughts there from quarterbacks to defensive players. I think that there's definitely a handful of guys that can make a name for themselves. But at the end of the day, you've got to win games. So if they can do that, then they'll be in the mix for that. So we're getting ready to enter a long 18-week season. We want all the teams that we cover, obviously, to come out on top. But before the battle begins, we got to give the other teams some flowers. It's 2024 Locked On NFL season preview of the AFC West. We'll get to that right after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. You've heard me talk about FanDuel a lot. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, they have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV, only by betting $5. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook, which is FanDuel. Check it out, FanDuel.com. And the 2024 Locked On NFL season preview continues. A reminder, you can get daily coverage of your favorite NFL team by subscribing to the Locked On podcast, to their Locked On podcast. We also have the NFL covered nationally with Locked On NFL, Locked On NFL Scouting, Peacock and Williamson, Locked On Fantasy Football, and Locked On Dynasty Football, and get 24/7 coverage of the NFL with our brand new Locked On NFL stream, free on YouTube and Amazon Fire TVs. That's a lot that we've got going on the Locked On network. A little flex right there. I think that that's awesome that everything is covered from every single angle. So no matter what you want and how you want it, you got it here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So guys, we want to go around the league, around the division, I should say, and give other teams some flowers, some guys that really, are big time players in the division. And we kind of talked about it and touched on it when we talked about potential MVPs. But David, let's start with you. As you look around the division, who are some players that you look at and like, wow, that's a fantastic player?
Yeah, I mean, I can easily give one from every single team. I think Max Crosby is a player from the Raiders that is a defensive end. You want every single defensive end to emulate with how he plays the game, with the effort, and I think also just a great story of him turning his life around and trying to, beating addiction. I think that's, an admirable story for him. And he's a fantastic defensive player. I think, for the Broncos, for me, it was Patrick Surtain. I mean, he's incredible, a career reception percentage of 60.1%, career missed tackle rate under 10%, 24 pass breakups, 7 interceptions in the 3 years. Like, he's truly a fantastic player. And then, of course, Chris Jones, we've already talked about. He's just a game wrecker. I mean, you don't see a lot of guys now that Aaron Donald is no longer in the league that has the ability to truly take over a game from the middle, from the interior of your defensive line. And yeah, they move him around and they try to get the matchups, but he spends the most of his time in the middle of a defense, wrecking offensive linemen. And so I think those are all players that, you have to kind of give some consideration and give them their flowers. They're all great players.
David, I think that you were scouting Pat Surtain there. Maybe you're trying to get the Chargers to go make a move for him. We always hear his name. Maybe he's going to be potentially a trade partner or whatever.
My goodness, I would love it. I mean, hello. He's a fantastic player. Yeah. Add him with Derwin James and Khalil Mack. Oh my goodness, that would be incredible.
It really would, but I'm sure Denver's not going to let that guy get out of
time. Nah, never. Especially not to a division opponent.
Right, that part. Ryan, what are you thinking when you look around the league? Who are the division? Who are you looking at that you kind of you want to tip the cap to?
I'm really intrigued for what the Chargers offense is going to become, and I'm a big Gus fan, so I think he has the potential through that offensive line, particularly on the left side. Really, really pissed off about the Chargers picking up a legacy for the Chiefs in Alt's kid. So I can see a lot going on there. I'm going to be paying particular attention there. And resurgence-wise, I like Sutton paired with Nix. Like, can he actually live up to his potential? That's another one that I'm going to be closely watching on. But honestly, the one that I'm most angry about, Q, is because of you. Because Wilkins in that defensive front with Max just makes me angry, because that's what I wanted in Kansas City. And I think that might be the dynamic duo that maybe lifts the whole front for the Raiders that we're going to have to pay special attention to.
Yeah, he's a special player, man. Just being able to watch him in training camp, Christian Wilkins, is fantastic. So I know exactly what you mean, what he brings to the table. Sarah, what are you thinking? Who are you looking at and tipping the cap to?
Yeah, I like some of the deeper cuts in this division. Honestly, I've been watching some Raiders preseason ball, Q, just so you know, I have been paying attention. I like Trey Tucker. I don't know how big of a role he's going to have this season, but he's really been impressive with just the vertical speed, playmaking ability at the catch point. I've really liked what I've seen from him as a third-round pick, I believe, last year, top 100 guy, and he looks real good this offseason. So I like him. For the Kansas City Chiefs, it's not as deep of a cut, but Trent McDuffie stepping up the last couple of years, really becoming one of the elite corners, in my opinion, in the game. And I'm very interested, and maybe Ryan can shed some insight as we go along here, but who's going to be playing corner along with him with L'Jarius Sneed gone. But even without L'Jarius, I think that Trent is outstanding. And he's one of those guys that's just like, just don't throw the ball that guy's direction. It's pointless to do that. And for the Chargers, I know we talked a little bit about Khalil Mack earlier, but what about Tuli Tuipulotu? I mean, having a pretty strong rookie season, 12 quarterback hits, a couple of forced fumbles. I think he's one of those guys that could really come on in the division this year as well.
No, I agree. Fantastic players. And Ryan, go ahead. Tell us who's going to be playing across from Trent.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. We're playing. You're playing. We're going to keep 10 DBs. How's that? That work for you? Okay. Could be Joshua Williams. Could be Jalen Watson. Could be Najee Johnson. The cool part about it is they're all from the same draft class, along with Trent McDuffie. So it is the Fab Five that will be on the field for the Chiefs. Those four corners, and Brian Cook will be your starter at the free safety look. Lot of options there, but your guess is literally as good as mine today.
Go ahead and write that down. Throw on the opposite side of Trent McDuffie. All right, good. All right.
That is funny. Well, I'm looking at Kansas City. I'm looking at Xavier Worthy, right? The speedster that I don't think anyone understands how the Chiefs ended up with him. I think there's still a conversation about how did that happen? And obviously he's a rookie.
How did we allow this?
Right, exactly. I mean, hey, I think a good idea is give Kansas City more weapons. Have another weapon, because why not, right? So he's going to be, I think, a fantastic player. I liked him a lot coming out of the University of Texas. In LA with the Chargers, man. I mean, I got to look at the big fella. The first pick, right? Joe Alt. I mean, that dude, he's going to be one of those guys that you just put him there and you just leave him there for 10, 15 years or whatever the case may be. Like that's exactly what Jim Harbaugh wants. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And, now you have him and you've got cornerstone guys there on the offensive line. You should be solid there. And Jim will do the rest, just kind of build around that. And, we've already talked about Pat Surtain in Denver, but how could you not continue to talk about Pat Surtain in Denver, right? I mean, he's fantastic. I like that player a lot. Was a big fan of his when he was at Alabama, and obviously he's a problem. And I've seen up close personal, Sarah, as you know, seen many battles between Devontae and him, and that dude holds it down. And when you're holding it down and winning against a guy like Devontae Adams, and if you're not noticing this because you're closing your eyes, I mean, he's got
something figured out.
Right. He's just that good of a player. And I'm excited to see what Bo Nix could bring to the table, because he's had a really good preseason. I wasn't high on him coming out of school. I just was kind of like, I don't know. But he's had a good, really good preseason. There was a reason why Sean Payton named him the starter. And then, and maybe you can shed some light on this. Troy Franklin, right? They drafted him as well, and that was Bo Nix's college teammate. I think that there's something to that, right? They already had that familiarity. What are you seeing from Franklin?
Well, he's done a decent job at camp. From what I understand, he is struggling a little bit with dropped passes. We haven't seen a ton of looks at really any of the wide receivers in the preseason. It's been a lot of stuff to the tight ends, running backs, things like that. And Troy has had a, up and down camp. Some people even speculating, like, could this guy get cut? I don't think that's going to happen. But I do agree with you. The chemistry that he's got with Bo Nix, it's going to come into play at some point. I think with Denver's receiver room, the way that it is right now, he's probably at best 5th or 6th in line. So I would expect more of a midseason, like as an injury replacement from Troy Franklin, or if he kind of comes on in practices and starts stacking days a little bit more. Not saying it was too big for him or anything like that, but just when you drop in passes, and you want the offense to stay on schedule, that's tough for a rookie. And so you don't want him to go out there and get the yips or anything like that. You want to make sure that he's feeling confident. And so I think we're going to hear a lot more about Troy behind the scenes before we see him making a bunch of big plays in the regular season.
Nice. All right. I like it. All right. Well, now we're going to go kind of rapid fire. We'll go around the division and talk about what we think the conference record is going to be. And as far as, where it's going to go, Chiefs, whatever order you guys think the season is going to get wrapped up and who's going to win the division and who's going to come in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So, David, we'll start with you. What do you think about the division? How do you see it shaking out?
Yeah, so I got Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Broncos. That's how I have it set up for this division.
All right, Sarah, back at you.
I've got Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers, Raiders this season.
All right, got the Raiders coming in dead last. There you go. So, Ryan, where are you at?
Sorry, Q. I got Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders too. It's just a quarterback thing. And somebody help Devontae, will you please?
I mean, that's fair. That's fair, right? They got to prove themselves. So for some reason, I'm going to give the Raiders more love than that just because I think that they're going to find a way to do something defensively. I do think that they're going to go over that 6.5 win total that we talked about in the first segment. So I'm going to go Chiefs. I feel like the Chargers and Raiders are always competing for that number 2 spot. I feel like that they're always kind of back and forth. Let's see. I'll go Chiefs. Chargers, Raiders, Broncos. How about that? Just for S's and giggles. Why not? I'll go. But I think, like I said, I feel like, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, are the Raiders and Chargers kind of always, they feel like they split every year with each other? Feels like that they're always kind of competing for that next spot.
Yeah, they definitely are. I think they're trying to get over the hump, trying to get over the Chiefs, but I think we're still probably maybe a year or two away from both of our perspectives. I think the Chargers are probably just in a little bit better position because they know who the coach is, they know who the quarterback is, and and I think defensively, the Raiders have a lot of things figured out, but offensively there's a lot of questions, and I think until those questions get answered, I think that's the order in which it's going to finish.
Right. And look, I think that the Raiders have a chance to be a really good team, but at the end of the day, as Ryan said, you got to have a quarterback, man. I mean, it's a league that you got to have a quarterback. There's no doubt about it. 3 teams in the division are very comfortable with who their quarterback is, and one has a big question mark. So there's that. But fellas, the season's here, right? We're excited about the season. The AFC West is always a battle. It's always a lot of fun, and we just get to talk about games that really matter. So, David, have a fantastic season. Of course, Locked On Chargers. Make sure you check in all things Chargers. David does a fantastic job. Sarah Benninger, Locked On Broncos, fantastic job as well. Ryan Tracy, of course, tip of the cap to you and the Kansas City Chiefs, Locked On Chiefs, and I'll be here for the Locked On Raiders podcast. So this is our 2024 Locked On NFL season preview of the AFC West.